the soul, and spirituality is breath. Together they reveal truths too deep for words, bringing the seen, bridging the seen and the unseen. Inspiring. To continue with our conversation, we'll have our next speaker. He is a multiple award-winning film and stage actor with over 22 years experience in various forms of theater and screen productions. He has a first-class Bachelor of Fine Arts degree from this august School of Performing Arts at this premier University of Ghana, Legon. He further obtained a Master of Arts degree in Dramatic Arts with distinction from the University of the Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, South Africa. He is currently a lecturer in acting at the National Film and Television Institute, NAFTI, teaching at the bachelor's degree, the diploma level, and also handling acting certificate courses at the same institution. As it is the case that the art of the artist is inseparable from his spirituality in this particular case. May we, with a round of applause, welcome the presentation of Mr. Adjetey Anang, aka Pusha, who looks like a bad boy on screen. Let's see who he really is. Welcome.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you so much. And standing on all existing protocols, I want to say a very good morning to you all. I was just discussing with my senior at Unimac IFT, NAFTI, that no matter the many years of standing on the stage and being in front of the camera, I still feel the jitters, some nervousness when I have to face people, and especially in this context, my seniors in academia, my seniors in faith, and so I find this very humbling, honoring to be able to share a part of my journey with you on this topic, which I have titled "Prioritizing Character: A Weapon in Engaging the Arts and Popular Culture." And so this is just going to be a snapshot of what has been born out of my experience and journey, so that I believe that at the end of it, we can relate, we'll be inspired, and probably I might have provoked you in certain aspects. And so kindly stay with me. So, prioritizing character, a weapon in engaging the arts in popular culture. Engaging the arts in popular culture requires a robust relationship between the arts and Christian faith. As a Christian in this arena, any attempt to enhance the existing state of affairs without a critical evaluation of the nature of such a relationship would be an act of playing the ostrich. There is no denying the fact that advancement in technology has contributed to making our world a smaller stage. But so has the exposure to popular cultures been made easily accessible, where the good, the bad, the ugly continue to influence each other with one craving for supremacy, an ongoing tug of war where the Christian faith must attain dominance. The strength of popular culture is embedded in the areas of literature, music, television and film, fashion and lifestyle, and social media, and the internet. Now, these strong pillars thrive on dynamism, and therefore the need for intentional and deliberate engagement. The influence and impact of these pillars cannot be overemphasized. The forerunners of these pillars are easily transported into the spotlight, garnering massive followings who mimic and reflect their idol. And at this point, I just want to recall, just remembering messages that come into my inbox, and some of which include, "Oh, Adjetey, what you're wearing, I would want to wear. Who is your tailor," for example. And then some also come in the form of, "Oh, where you're seated, that you took that shot. I would love to go there and also have that image." If it's something that I've captured in the image where there's a prop I'm using, people want to just use and be a part of and connect with me in that sense. And so trying to mimic and sort of reflect what they see in me. We should agree that no specific field is exclusively reserved for any group deemed unworthy. The days of hesitating due to the secular dominance of a specific pillar are over. We need to shine light into spaces considered dark. We must engage thoughtfully rather than blindly or in the same way that the world does. We need a weapon, one that has outlived us and will continue to do so. Now, one significant weapon has been loud in my experience and journey in the arts and the engagement with popular culture, which is the quality of character. As simple a word as it is, it forms the very basis upon which a solid foundation of truly positive impact is built. You talk of the likes of Paul, Noah, Moses, John the Baptist, etc., effective in outreach and great leadership, learned obedience to the only high power there is, that is God, brandish truthfulness, even in the face of personal hurt, and regarding Jesus laying down his life in unconditional love, for while we were yet sinners, Christ died for you and me. That done, the condition is to receive him and allow him to shape your character. I'm always looking for an excuse or an opportunity to say this. You're being thrown into the spotlight largely due to the character I played in Pusher in a reproductive health drama series. I did learn that the task was not just about exhibiting skill or talent, but I needed a grounded character as the foundation. And so when talent or skill have been exhibited and achieved for the day, and a lady fan avails herself for conversations exclusively for spouses committed to each other, the test of character will determine if I entertain such or draw a clear boundary. The latter was what I struggled with, indicating a weak character base. Beyond the accolades, awards, praises, there was a vacuum within that nothing could fill, especially when I not only professed my faith openly, but I yearned for all my following to see me and assess me through the lens of the Christian faith. My rude awakening was that I cannot be a part of one of the pillars of society within the arts and rely on a character that lacks scruples. In the same way, I cannot make motivational posts on my social media platforms on great virtues or values and then be found directing all my 5 fingers of my left hand towards a cab driver who rudely crossed me in traffic due to intolerance or of self-control. Part of the reason was why I did put out my first book out there, and it wasn't because I wanted to follow in the footsteps of the one before me, who had gone before me. If you all remember of one Yvonne Nelson, who was an actress who put out a book My motivation was because I needed my following. I needed my fellow actors and actresses, especially the young and potentials, who were either in the spotlight or were about to make a step into it, to know the man behind the characters that they know. I realized that they knew the characters in so many respects, fell in love with the characters that I played, but had a different perception of who Adjetey Anang was. For many, he can do no wrong. They have this idealist, perfect scenario, perfect imagination of who Adjetey Anang was, and I thought that was dangerous. My journey, I've seen as not a mistake, has been calculated, and I see it as a calling into a field that need a lot of mentors, that need a lot of inspiration, because you can only appreciate what we go through when you're under the spotlight. The pressures that we not only put on ourselves as artists, but also what society puts on us. And there are pressures that can shake any foundation. It may not topple over, but can shake that foundation. And that was the case in which I found myself. And so for me, it was important that the book, which I titled Adjetey Anang, which thrived on faith, imperfections, and resilience, was a message to my young artists who found this, who were also under the spotlight, who were making or about to make choices that have landed me in trouble before, for it to be a marker to make better choices. And also for those who felt that, oh, well, it's Adjetey Anang, I can't go before him and ask him stupid questions. How did you deal with the ladies when they were all over you and all that, because they felt that I'm so perfect, Adjetey, won't have those challenges. And so that also gave them some inspiration and courage for them now to engage with me. Well, look, Adjetey, I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling with that, and then I can, because now I have come out to say that, and for most of them, they were surprised and shocked, and some of my revelations in the book, and it was intentional and deliberate. I had a lot of oppositions, even from close family members, because they thought that I was staining the Anang name, even though our predecessors had done that already. I mean, look, if you're born into a family of 8 uncles and aunties, and out of the 8, only 1 marriage is surviving till date, and even that is struggling, where there are born 1s here, born 2s here, born 3 out of wedlock, all over messy, then you know that there's a cycle that will repeat itself on the next generation. And therefore, I found those challenges very real in in my work life. And so these were real things that we're dealing with, to digress a bit. But then it was important for me to come out in the open so that people would make informed choices that are better to begin to shape the industry in which we find ourselves. My weapon needed sharpening. Throughout the pages of history, we have witnessed how developing great character and being consistent doing that have resulted in good results. But failure to uphold same has also resulted in undesirable consequences. For all of Moses' leadership, a character flaw cost him the promised land. Despite the accolade, a man after God's own heart, David could not avert the pending consequences for taking Bathsheba from a murdered husband. It is very obvious that while we have evolved, advanced, and progressed technologically, academically, and so on as a human species, human character, in my estimation, has largely rather deteriorated. Pronounced state of homosexuality, intolerance, wars, etc., etc. While acquisition of knowledge is paramount in the face of the arts and popular culture, I dare say we shoot ourselves in the foot when we do not first prioritize character, not forgetting that it is not the acquisition of knowledge, but the application of it that determines the quality of results, and great character is the weapon that determines the desired results. And so the A-list scholar and chartered accountant from Oxford, from Yale, the University of Ghana, or the Akrofi-Christaller Institute for short, can become a threat to the system or institution if his application of the acquired knowledge in his field is not grounded in great character. In a space, hallelujah, in a space that abounds with talent, while knowledge acquisition and excellence in delivery cannot be sacrificed through the Christian faith lens, the quality of character must be the priority. This is not a one-man fight or show. All pillars under popular culture must be engaged from every angle, inspired by the mantra, and here I would say, in the spirit of quotations, I hope that this may also be considered as a quotation after verification, though. But inspired by the mantra that prioritizing character is a higher calling than exhibiting skill. The drive for this must be aggressive and unapologetic. We need to lead the numbers and following towards not just engaging the arts and popular culture, but also towards dominating and influencing trends within the space. While our spiritual standing must not be in doubt, we cannot also hide behind the word or misapply it and hold God accountable with, "Your word is your bond." God cannot lie when the quality of our character is questionable. So I say to a brother who professes, "No weapon formed against me will prosper." Well, I beg to differ, my brother, that the weapons will prosper and eliminate you due to a silent caveat, that your great character or otherwise will largely influence your protection, or should I say your protectability. Lest not self-destruct, hone your character. When all is said and done, we definitely cannot eliminate the arts or popular culture. They will continue to evolve and advance, but into what or towards which direction respectively? Character must remain constant and entrenched deeply to have any chance of quality engagement, influence, or dominance in an unpredictable but very powerful terrain. May God bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I was expecting a little bit more. I was waiting for the rest. And I think we will discover the rest in our discussion. It's a provocative idea. You must hone your character. And I think maybe it might be even more provocative for Christians and for Christian leaders, because we are very adept at quoting scripture, and we're very adept at acting Christian-like, and we're very adept at anything having to do with the church. I don't think we necessarily pay attention to our character. And I don't mean that just in the sense of, you're a good person, you're an upstanding person, but I mean in one-on-one relationship with colleagues, with students, with staff. So I would like to have you discuss more. What do you mean One, by honing your character. And what do you mean by prioritizing character instead of exhibiting skill? I think this is very worthy, especially for Christian leaders who always, I think, need to be reminded. So I'm very grateful for that. So we will open the discussion up so that we can engage these ideas of character, honing character, prioritizing character instead of skill in the arts, but certainly in theology, in ministry, in preaching, in being a missionary. I met some missionaries in my time that if they had come to me to tell me about Christ, I would not be a Christian today. Because their character, they disturb me profoundly. So this is a discussion, a timely discussion that we need to have. So we're open the floor, questions, comments, points of clarity. Please, you're welcome.
Hi, my good friend, Pa Adjetey, I'm not wondering to see you with this wonderful information. I quite remember your days in this house as a student.
Yeah.
My question to you, with all this talent, brain, wisdom that we have, what plan do you have for School of Performing Arts? Thank you.
What brand do I have for the School of Performing Arts?
What brand?
Plans. Was it plans?
What plans do you have?
School of Performing Arts.
Can I answer my question? Is that a question for a donation? Is that a question for some kind of financial support? Because I would suggest that you discuss that over tea or coffee. And I would suggest that you seek to engage the ideas that have been presented here in terms of theology and the arts. And then the support and donations, you can do that in your private time over a cup of tea when he might be more open to engage that topic. What do you think? Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments pertaining to the presentation that has been made here today? Thank you. Yes, I'll hear from Mrs. Settles and then from the sister in the back.
Well, I'm just saying that because you had those questions for him. So if we can hear more on your questions, I think that would be helpful. Yes.
Questions I had, because as I said, I was waiting for more. And I took notes as you were speaking. You spoke about honing character.
Yeah.
And I definitely think we need that in the church and in leadership in the church. Then you also spoke about prioritizing character instead of exhibiting skill, which I think is right on point, particularly if you're engaging popular arts, but especially if you are a quote-unquote man of God or a teacher of God or a missionary of God. You definitely need that. And then I have my other comments that I was making in terms of how do you do this without being a courageous person, without being a person with great bravery, right? So I think, can you unpack it? Can you elaborate a little bit more?
I think that one of the things that I have, apart from struggling with and then subsequently learning, was that in the world of film or acting, when we go on set for productions, there is a culture that is grounded. And so if you are a Christian, if you are whatever, there are, when it comes to certain departments, you need to subscribe because that is what is done. And so you come in there, you deliver as an artist in front of the camera, you exhibit your qualities in the role that you've been given. But when camera is off, you can then go back into the departments of, flirting with a girl, or touching somebody somewhere that is, not appropriate, because these are what makes us happy in this setting. Okay, and then if you don't subscribe, then it feels like you are the spy or the odd one out. And so many would have to subscribe, not because they want to, but it's a getaway kind of thing. I can't be seen in the open doing these things, but this is a safe space that we've created that unconsciously is repeated over time. And all too soon, it becomes the normal that we don't, what is it? There's nothing wrong with this. I'm not killing anybody. It's okay. And so it's very, very important that whilst you realize that we are not just made of actors and actresses, there are people who come in and out. And what we're doing is that the message we're sending is that, well, we preach, but we don't practice what we preach in that sense. And that I have found also relatably in the church, where I see people who stand behind the pulpit, who I know personally, whose lifestyle is nothing related to what they preach, unknowingly to a larger congregation who see them as how they saw Adjetey and Anang, who play the characters. And so we must also be willing to share, and I have a challenge, and why I'm unpacking this, because it was also born out of the challenge that I had with people who would not share their challenges, but only share their hallmarks and their greatness. And therefore, you give this illusion of you can do no wrong, you're the head pastor, and therefore it goes down to when the pastor says I should do this, it must be a statement from God, and therefore I must subscribe to it, even though you know that the Bible is against or contradicts what he is saying. And so at every step of the way, character is being questioned as to, we may have all the skill and all the knowledge that we could impart, but then if we don't have that base, that grounding as in a place of having a grounded character, in that sense, you must be the example of what you are preaching or imparting. And if we do not do that, then there's a disconnection. And so for me, when we are in the space, I find a way of, okay, I'm supposed to deliver as a performer, as an artist, but my Christian faith has a role to play in all this. And I think that is what brings about the conflict, because people are not, they're not practicing Christians. And from, unfortunately, some of my colleagues who may say, may put on their pages that they're Christian and give you all the quotations, practically, behind the scenes, they're nothing. So it's more of show business, and not the challenging ourselves even by the messages that we're putting out there. Many a time, what happens is that when we impersonate or embody characters, and we want the audience or our target, audience to take a message, we don't allow the transformation that we expect the target audience to go through. We sort of build some kind of a boundary where it doesn't affect us. And so we're preaching to the public and expecting a change or result, but we are not changing. We can't be changed by that, because we are protected from being transformed by the characters that we're playing. That is, if it's supposed to impact positively, for us to reconsider on the subject of maybe abuse and the implications of you hitting your wife as a man, and what it does to the children, what that doesn't impact us, because we are under we are the masters. We are above that. And so all of this has questioned my motives. And my Christian faith has questioned that. And in most cases, even though I found myself playing, I realized that the play has to happen in a boundary that God has set. Because the moment I step beyond that, then there's going to be a conflict between my Christian faith and the skill that I'm exhibiting. And that should always be a connection and a marriage. Because the quality, and I always say that when two people sit for an exam and both have 100%, it's not the result that matters for me, it's the quality of the process. And so character will be found in, did I study on my own, make all the sacrifices, the research, and then go sit for the exam? Or with you didn't study, you just got a paper and tacked it under your shorts, and in the exam, we just copied and put down the answers. We all had 100%, but the quality of the process is what for me is important. And that is where the test of character is. And that's why I will talk about prioritizing character. And I don't know whether I've been able to expatiate a bit on this.
I wanted to thank Mr. Adjetey Anang for coming in here and speaking about character. We don't hear that very often these days. Predominantly in our popular culture, all we hear is, for the most part, talking about skill, as you rightly pointed out, improving one's skill. And we also hear a lot about the hustler culture. And by the hustler culture, the way I understand it is doing whatever you have to do to make things work. And that really makes one think about character in terms of what is one's moral grounding. And so I'm very grateful that you spoke about something which is not a very popular topic today, to provoke us to think and question our own moral foundation. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that for me, thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for sharing who you are. But I'm thinking, as you spoke, I was just thinking of the need for discipleship in that space of artists in popular culture. Because really, how do you hone character? It goes back to the process of discipleship. And is there anybody looking out for those artists in that regard? And are there support systems for Christian artists to engage each other and the Word of God, which ultimately is the one that transforms us? So how do we hone character? So I think for me, it goes back to the question of discipleship. And I'm just wondering, is there anything at all out there for people like you who are struggling to balance? Because recently I was in a space with performers and I just felt so out of things. All the glitz and glam and all the artifice. I was like, I wouldn't survive in this kind of thing for too long. And then I met a Christian who said, yes, we come and do our part and then we go. These people are not church people. And I'm like, so how, I don't know, how, I hope you understand my question.
Yeah, I do. If I'm to comment on that, I think it goes back to, you can't, and I think that's one of the challenges, is that once we say we are members of the faith, where's the evidence? If we don't allow the word to dictate, then there's a disconnection. And that is why we can jump in and out. But then the calling then is not achieved, because I can go into a certain space and there are they seem very secular, they're not practicing, and I can go just do my bit and move out. But how, that is like still sitting on the fence. And I think that those are the spaces that we need to impact. And so you become vulnerable, and in some cases, it's even a danger because you are labeled. And the challenge too is that, especially when you find yourself being in the spotlight, and yet everything that God talks about or Christ talks about of excellence and what that would bring onto you in terms of he supplies all our needs according to his riches in Christ Jesus, then I should be rich. Shouldn't I be? But you realize that for most artists that is not the case, and those who are doing all the sacrificial work, those who are practicing daily as Christians, that is not really that for most people. And so they would make a case, yeah, well, you're doing all that, and yet look, I have the money, I have the dough, I'm practicing, but God has not taken that away from me. I don't think that I'm doing anything bad or wrong. Otherwise, I should be punished for that, and I should suffer the consequences for that. And so it goes down to, what are we not getting right, and allowing the word and to really transform us so that we can impact. Because as for impact or impartation, I always say there's the quality of it, because knowledge abounds, and today now we're having different interpretations of certain quotations in the Bibles, and people are using all manner of things because there's a fundamental motive behind it. And if those motives are not challenged or tested, then we would have a confusion. And unfortunately, the larger numbers are those who do not subscribe to our faith dictates. And so, yeah.
In the corner.
All right. Thank you very much, brother. And thank you for becoming the face of Ghana. I met you in Amsterdam last year, if you remember. You were going that direction. I was coming here, and I said, I know this face. Thank you. All right, so I wasn't here at the beginning, but if I can understand what I heard at the end correctly, to tell me if I'm trying to get what you are trying to say. That the arts is make-believe. It's something that in Ghana, when we say, oh yeah, concert, like you're doing concert, we mean you are not being serious, because we all feel that anything that is staged is not real. That's what we think. So people don't take artists seriously, right? So what I hear you say is that if we don't hone character and let people know who we truly are, what we stand for, they will not take what we do seriously, because they would think that it's just a continuation of who we are, what we do. The concept that we do, So if somebody sees Reverend Settles and the way he lives his life, that he's very upright man, he's straight and that kind of thing, and he's acting, then they will take him serious because they know that what he's doing is serious, because they know who he truly is. So what I hear you say is that because the art is make-believe and people think that it's not real, and it's a way of also educating us and all of that, that we should live our lives in such a way that when we are educating people through the art, they will take us seriously. Is that correct?
I think that in a nutshell, what I'm saying is that we have to justify our calling when we say that we are Christians. And I think that's where the conversation begins, because then you could stand outside of not being a Christian, and I don't think that you'd have anybody challenging your lifestyle or the choices that you make. But once you come under the canopy of I'm a Christian and I'm practicing Christian, then that should always influence what you do in terms of your field and exhibiting it. And that's where, for me, I would say that because, and also most importantly, because of what social media has become, where we're projected into spaces just by a click of a button, it's important that people get to know. And of course, because we're put in the spotlight, people subscribe to us. People, when we even cough, there are people who want to cough, imitate that cough, as that's how they want to cough, because that's how Adjetey and Anang coughs. And so we do have some kind of holding on these persons that even when we feed them poison, they will drink it. We don't even see the the size of this, even in these parts, but even in, look at the rest of the world. We've seen the likes of Michael Jackson when they just appear and people faint and they have to rush them to the hospitals. These are the kind of holding that they have on people. And because of this space and this medium, as Christians, we must ensure that whilst it's an opportunity we have to sort of continue to expand the faith and do the works of God in having a hold on a person, but also feeding them good food, good nutrients, good word that would, and empower them to be able to live as children of God. And so, in many angles, these are what I'm saying through what I said. Yeah.
Did you have your hand up before?
Yes, please.
I didn't.
Now you see.
Okay, we'll hear
Thank
from
you.
Dr. Katie and then the other brother.
Thank you very much, Adjetey. I admire you so much as a young performing artist coming. And I want to ask, this came up in the first presentation. I want to ask how you deal with certain roles that conflicts with your religion, because there are some roles that spiritually you have to, and to make a character real, you have to involve yourself, embody the character to be able to bring out what people will believe what you are playing. So how do you deal with such characters? I love it when you share your experience. I take it very serious. You have no idea. So please share with me. Thank you.
So let me give you a typical example. So I had this script somewhere in the late 90s, actually, on homosexuality, and I was supposed to play this gay guy. And this was a time where it was still a no. I mean, the subject itself, you can't even discuss it. And I belong to this family background of we can't talk about sex, we can't talk about homosexuality or gay, none of that. So we are picking information from the street and from people, different influences and all that. For me, the understanding is that somebody definitely has to play Judas Iscariot if we're telling about Jesus. You can't leave that guy out. And so the fact that I'm playing the bad guy doesn't mean I am the bad guy. But that will be tested in the quality of life behind the screen. And so that's always been assessed. For me, I don't have a problem playing a homosexual or gay but what is the message? If the message is just to, based on this, your role, what we intend to do is that we want to propagate the message that homosexuality is okay, we can still, we should let them be. Then I have a problem because then my Christian faith will kick in. That there's a problem. So I'd want us to negotiate. We'd have to talk about it. I will play it based on if this is the message, then, this is what we'll do. If you don't have an answer and it's a good subject to talk about and it will be sensational enough and it doesn't address certain key issues, then we'll have a problem. So that negotiation would have to happen. And it doesn't matter if you're giving me all the rice in China. I need to be sure that my Christian faith, because that for me is why I'm in this, and therefore it must not be conflicted or compromised. Yeah.
If you permit me to call you Pusher,
please go ahead.
Because I want to push the discipleship question.
Yes.
I'll be glad to know your testimony, how you came to the saving knowledge of Christ. Who discipled you, or who is your mentor? But better still, your colleagues with whom you featured. I don't remember the title of
Things to Do for Love.
Yeah, that's right.
That's it.
Where are they? What is their Christian faith as at now?
Right.
And what are you doing personally to reach out to them if they have not?
I like that. So at every stage of my life, I'd had different mentors, but with, of course, my Christian faith, the first person that I had looked up to was my mom, because somehow my dad served as one of the reasons why I decided to be a practicing Christian, because he led with example, but the results were not anything to write home about. And he led with example about the other side of example. And so we couldn't connect in that way, even though his choices and decisions influenced me in a certain way. And so she was my first, example. And for me, it wasn't just about we had a tradition of going to church, but I wanted something beyond that, of having a relationship with this figure, the spiritual being, and whom I read about every day, and that opened me up to knowledge and wisdom, and therefore it was a personal decision to really engage in that. It was not all rosy, of course, because at every point I've been challenged, and if you understand what family patterns are, our challenge would be relationships, and as has been proven with my uncles and aunties, and so I knew that at every point in my life, I would have those challenges. And those were the biggest challenges that I've ever had. And to this day, it's not like you overcome a certain challenge and so, then that's it, you've crossed the barrier. But it comes in different forms and shapes. And when you think that you've overcome, then something comes up again. So it's a daily, trying to not feel or think that you've arrived, because the next test is going to come. And that's why we need to allow that word to continue on a daily basis, renew us and empower us. And so that was what led me to my saving, giving my life. And my colleagues, fortunately, what I have inspired is that we take advantage of social media. And therefore we've been able to connect to all those who are not here, other parts of the world, and where we're trying to show interest in what each other is doing, attend social events, and rub off each other. There's some who we have connected to who were hiding because they were going through a lot of challenges. They've made certain bad choices and has had an impact on them, and we've been able to connect with them and really pull them up. And so having taken advantage of these social media chat groups have helped us. Of course there's still some stubborn ones, but our daily living is a testament, and it gives them a first-hand example of, oh yeah, these guys are consistent with what they do, and we're hoping that gradually all will come into the saving grace of the power of Jesus. Yeah.
Okay, we hear from Dr. Gazy and then from the sister in the back. Can we hear from Dr. Gazy, please?
Oh, thank you very much, Onupa. I'm just wondering, you made mention of something about China, if the storyline, but I'm also concerned with the detail. So the storyline is good,
Yeah.
but how do you negotiate? And I'm not being personal. I want you to kind of challenge us, what people like you go through.
Yeah.
With the details, because some of the movies are not family friendly.
Right.
There may be good storyline,
exactly,
but so I'm wondering how you negotiate. Sometimes the producer or screenwriter will want this, but you think the storyline is good, but the detail, how do you sometimes negotiate that?
Oh yes, we do negotiate. For example, there was a particular scene, and I'm happy that you told me that you had seen it, Devil in the Detail, and this was Shirley Frimpong, so one of Ghana's top directors, and who, when she says something, people would have to just act. But the challenge we had with a particular scene was an intimate scene where one of the selling points of it was to be a bit graphic. And because that also has its audience, and it will add to the box office and all that. Now, the unfortunate thing for her was that it was me in the mix, and then we had to negotiate. Now, before the scene was shot, I had that conversation with her. That word on paper, we can't translate that into actual images, and so we need to find a way of going about it. And she said, okay, we'll do it this way. camera angles, tilt, etc., and then positioning would make it believe that we are actually, involved intimately. And it was said and done. But on the actual shoot, that communication had not gone to my fellow actress. And she was a first timer. And so she wanted to impress Shirley. So she was going all out. So while she was going all out, I was pulling back. And so it felt very awkward, unbelievable. And at a point, I just screamed, yes. And Shirley panicked, and therefore we had to halt, and then we had to have the conversation again. I said, Shirley, you hadn't communicated to the girl that this, and she said, oh, I'm sorry about that. Then we had to re-engage and then make it a bit, because I believe that, it's an art, and we don't have to be graphic. And most times, just by the way I look at somebody, the way we connect, the chemistry alone should tell us that these people are in love. And so we don't need to, graphically show everything in images, because it has its own place. Even, and I'm also protecting myself, not just as an artist, but also beyond the artist, Adjetey Anang. With the baggage that I have and the cycle that can be committed, sometimes when we connect in that way, physically, on set, even when the camera says cut, we're still continuing the journey beyond the cut. So we find ourselves holding hands and communicating because some chemistry has been. And that is why, there's a rule that when you are not married, don't do things that married people do. Because there's a connection that happens in the spiritual realm that has implications in the physical. And so when that happens, even though you think that you're playing a role, familiarity sets in, and then it develops into something behind the scenes. And if you know most of the, especially in the Hollywood spaces, most relationships starts with relationships on set. And if we don't put in those personal boundaries, and so personal boundaries are one of the things, having boundaries, and has helped me in negotiating. Sometimes you lose bigger gigs. For example, I had this alcoholic beverage company who wanted me to do something huge, and it was a huge budget for me. It was the biggest I'd ever received. But then I was mentoring young people at church. I was facilitating, and I kept telling them, you boys, no drink, no alcohol, no girls, no drugs, just focus on your. And then I had this image of, if I take this job and the money is good, we've been praying for manna for that, and then it comes, a telephone call. If I go in and take this deal, all these young people are seeing as a contradiction of what I keep telling them, because that image of me drinking alcohol defeats everything. And so I can walk into Sunday and they're like, hey, Uncle Adjetey, they say we shouldn't drink. We saw you drinking. And so I have to weigh. I'm thinking of my pocket, but then I'm putting other lives in danger because they're looking up so much to me. And so that is where sometimes you may lose, but of course the reward for passing that test, it's priceless, because there's ripples of it. It's like God is testing you with this, and then later on it opens bigger doors and pushes you into corridors of power, etc.
Okay. We will hear from this sister who has a look on her face as though she fears she'll be overlooked. And it will not happen. It will not happen. We will definitely hear from you, and then we'll hear from Dr. Settles, and we will stop there because we have 15 minutes more for our discussion. At the end of our discussion time, we have a 15-minute break, which is what I think my sister is about to tell us.
Yes, so during that 15 minutes, you can stretch another leg or two if you so desire, and then you can visit the canopy and take a drink and a bite, which I'm sure will be very refreshing. Good. Talking about this beer bit of the thing, I'll tell you what. One day somebody walked up to me and said, I'm looking for a smile for an ad, and I think you've got that smile. I said, what is that? It's a party. Beer will be served. When the beer appears, I want to catch your smile. They see the beer, they see your smile, acknowledging the beer. So I said, You don't have to drink it. Oh, that's all. Just the smile. Yeah, the temptation can be very difficult.
That's why you need to
Yes.
be grounded. Can we please hear from the sister in the back?
Hi, Mr. Adjetey. Thank you very much for this, for sharing your experiences with us. I think it's important to hear conversations like this, especially for young and upcoming artists all over the world. But I have a little fear, and my thoughts are not fully formed, but I'm just going to share it. There's a saying where I come from that whatever you continually look at, you eventually become. So and they say this in relation to things like, if I grow up, I don't want to be like my father. I don't want to be like my mother. And so because you have that at the back of your mind, with every step you're taking, you eventually become it without even knowing you become it. So my fear, or the question I'm putting to you now is, how does sharing things like this as a way of curbing character, things like that, how does it not, I don't know, facilitate, encourage subconsciously? Because it might not necessarily be that, so that's my intention. But because I read that book and I saw that, Adjetey has been through this, and I don't want to be like it, and I don't, but it subconsciously gets into your mind and that becomes your reality. There's that. But my second question, should I say, is how we bring in cultural perceptions or cultural frameworks generally into this Christianity thing, where what we deem morally upright as a people becomes what is morally upright as Christians. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense. Where some time ago in Nigeria, if a lady wears trouser, that's a sin because that's not what we are used to. But that became a thing that the Christian faith, encouraged. But down the line and over the years, it's changed. People wear trousers to church now and all of that. So how that space of are we saying this because it is Christian, or are we saying this because that's what we believe as a culture? Thank you.
I think your second question will be best answered by Dr. Styles, but Dr. Settle, sorry. So I think that the first, in the same vein, what you continually do and engage in is what you become, and that's the marker you're leaving, and so for me is and I always want to give examples. So for example, in my journey, where I went beyond the camera, and so engage in, for example, leading people on in conversations that were reserved for married couples, for example. And then out of the blue, in the journey upon, I come to a realization that, look, this is not who I'm supposed to be as a Christian. There has to be a shift. And so when that shift begins, everything I do from that shift must contradict what I was. And so there was a point where I was craving to even meet those that are engaged with those conversations, for them to see and see for themselves that, hey, this guy is changing, and it's not just about me saying it, but even when they come in and they want to test it, even when I put my book out there, I knew that was not the end. It was only the beginning, because there are people who will just come in forms and shapes with ideas of, let's try and see whether he says what he said he is or he has become. And so that's in itself is a challenge, because you're putting yourself out there for people to like chisel and find out whether you're still grounded, you become grounded now. And for them to realize that, oh no, he's actually, changed. And so it's more of what you repeatedly do that is on the right side. And so I have boundaries now. You want to engage with me personally on that level, and on what? Is it related to my film? No, I can't do that. And sometimes it may sound a bit not friendly, but I need to protect myself, because I'm only me, and there are things that I need to achieve so that I'm not pulled back. Because once you've been there before, the spiritual realm would want to find ways in which to, because he's falling here before, he can fall again. And so you have to consistently do that, and also have accountability persons. I think that one of the things that we don't do very well is have accountability persons, because we are wired to be stand as islands, and that also informs the way we even. That's why we don't even have data for movies that we do. When you want to ask somebody what it cost them in doing a production, they are mute, because the moment they tell you next job, you're going to charge them because you know that they get this much from this bank or whatever. And so people are not willing to share their experiences, share their challenges, because of stigma, because of what you think about them again. And so we need to break that barriers. And that is why repeatedly you have to, if you say this is who you are, it must go beyond just the verbal, but there are actual evidences to show that consistently. And I think that has helped in rewriting the story. And for all those who have interacted with me in the past can clearly see, but it's still a journey that it's still a work in progress. And so it's not that. Doc.
Thank you very much, and thank you. I want to pick from where you left off. I think it's actually a very good, almost concluding point, and related to, you are in the realm of arts. Some of us are on the ministry side, theological side, but the connection I see when you made that statement, I am only me, is very profound, because I think the pulpit space, the ministry space, is also a performance space, potentially. And the dissonance that can be, as you indicated in your talk, between what is proclaimed and professed and then what is lived, the gap can be very large. And I think about this phrase, don't believe your own hype. And the temptation, I think in your profession is very similar, whether in academia or in the pulpit, to believe your own hype, where you start thinking you are what people think you are. And that gap in character is significant. And I'll just give this small anecdote, and then you can respond. And when I was young, my father, I mentioned, was a pastor, and very small church. This lady used to come. She would pop up at our house at unexpected times, odd hours. I didn't know why this lady was doing this. She would just pop up. She would come to church. She would pop up at our house, and at a point, we didn't understand. And at a point, she told us why she did it. And she said that she had never met a pastor who lived in his house the way he preached on the pulpit. So she would show up because she wanted to catch us to see, are you really this way at home like you say you are at church? And for me, when we were growing up, we just thought, we are normal. This is how we live all the time. So we didn't know what the big deal was. The young shall grow. As I grew up and I experienced things in ministry, and I said, hey, some of these pastors you hail, people that you feel are superstars in the ministry, so to speak, just as you have in the film. And then you see behind the scenes, you say, wow. And it becomes a discouragement, to people in their faith. Some people have just deviated not because of the truth of the word of God, but because what they see contradicts that, And I think it's a very bold thing for you to say, coming from that position in the arts industry, to say, these also are struggles that we are having. And I want to prioritize character in my own life. I can only say that I wish that model would be more emulated even within the church space. Because I think people don't mind so much that people have struggles and challenges. What they mind is the pretense that you are something that you are not. And when they see the dissonance, that is what actually creates the challenges for people who are trying to live a faithful Christian life in whatever profession they find themselves. The other last comment is, my wife is here. She was a music student, and she and I have spoken about this much. You know, the culture that is created within that art space, where because you have to push yourself to perform, to act, it creates a subculture where certain things are okay. It's fine. You know, if you are in dance, have to be very comfortable with other people's bodies and touching and all these kinds of things that in the normal space you wouldn't do. In that space, it becomes like the norm. And if you don't do it, then you become the odd person out. And that also comes with a lot of other lifestyle, implications. We all go and drink, we all go and party, and it's normal. This is the lifestyle of the artist. So thank you very much for breaking that barrier for us to see a bit into your world. I appreciate it. That's my comment. I think I don't think there's a simple answer to that, but let me just quickly try to say culture that we all live in obviously influences our Christian faith practice. And our Christian faith practices influence our culture. It's a two-way street. We don't live in a cultureless Christianity. Christianity is always going to have a cultural flair. And so I think the issue is, not mistaking certain inherited patterns of Christian behavior and confusing them with the gospel, because those are not necessarily the same. And then 2, Christians need to be very guided and thoughtful about whether they engage or adopt things that they see in the culture around them unthinkingly, all under the guise of we are free in Christ. That's the other side of the equation, because sometimes we are free in Christ has turned to licentiousness. Freedom is not intended to be a license to do whatever you want to do. That's my quick comment on that.
Just to add to that briefly, let me give you just an experience and just for you to ponder over. Here was I get to church the first day that I had this hair messy like that, if you will. And then my senior pastor sees me and is like, "Hi, Adjetey, I like your hair." Yeah. And then he moves away. The wife sees me and is like, looks at my hair, is like, and then walks away.
Which one is spiritual?
Thank you.
I'm laughing because it's so real. It happens all the time. But I also wanted to say this. I remember when I first became a Christian, I was in a very small Kojic church. And we were not allowed to wear trousers because that was the rule of the church. We also had to always have something on our head. So I abided by it because I was just now coming into the faith. I went away to a very, very cold place. And I tried my best to keep wearing trousers. But I was so cold. I just had to wear trousers. It made sense to me. So I went and talked it over with the Lord. I said, now, I really need to know the truth here. Am I going to be a worse Christian because I am now wearing trousers than before when I wasn't wearing trousers, And I heard very clearly, look here, you got to take care of yourself, girl. If you go out there in that cold with these dresses on and you don't dress properly, you're going to get sick and die. And so I listened. So sometimes it's a matter of common sense. A lot of times it's a matter of just really seeking in the relationship that you have with Christ, to seek and find out, look, is this going to mean I'm a less Christian if I take this silly thing off my head? That kind of stuff. So sometimes you can think about it, you can pray about it, and you can use common sense. I want to really, really thank my brother for this presentation on character. on honing character in an arena where you are playing characters, but the character you play need to be grounded on your first and foremost character. And I think that goes in every arena, but particularly in ministry, in being theologian and pastor. So I'm very, very grateful. You are now welcome to go for tea. Please go for your tea, and please come back in about 15 minutes. Thank you very much.